Hi, everybody. Great to see everyone. Sorry we started a little bit late here. Thanks for joining Strive's Mentor Q&A, and today we're joined by Tal Tsfany. Tal is an executive in the software as a service industry and has successfully grown and scaled companies in this domain. He currently serves as the Chief Customer Officer and board member at Base CRM, which is the fastest growing CRM in market. Tal was also a vice president at Amdocs Inc., a multi-billion-dollar company in the telecommunications software industry. Tal holds a BSc in industrial engineering and MBA degrees. He's also the co-founder of the Ayn Rand Center in Israel. So we're very lucky to have him here today. We encourage live questions, everybody. So if anything comes up during this, just shoot a live question in that box over there, and we'll try to ask it for you. Tal, to get started, how about you tell us just a little bit more about your career trajectory and just kind of a general overview of what your career looks like.
Great. Happy to be here. Nice to see you all. So a little bit about myself. Yeah, I was a little child in Israel, growing in a southern city called Beersheba. At the age of 9, I found myself in a thing called kibbutz. I don't know if anyone is familiar with this concept, but it's kind of a commune. The idea came with the people that migrated from Russia to Israel. So I was in a very interesting environment from the age of 9 to 16, where there's no individual property and everything is shared. So I got my share of collectivism, and soon after, I went to the Israeli army, was in flight academy, then decided not to pursue a pilot career, and then just applied to engineering school. Did 4 years as an industrial engineer, and something kind of weird happened. I was an SAT tutor while I was a student. And they've asked me to take a role in that company while I was a student. I took a role. I opened a branch for them. Before I finished the university, we had 120 people working for us. And then when I finished my degree as a software engineer, I wanted to go into the booming tech industry, but they said, no, we want you to be a VP. And I was 26 at the time. And then I said, no, guys, I thought about it. I want to be a software engineer. That's what I've invested 4 years of my life to learn. And then they said, you know what, come and be the CEO. And it was 650 people. And I thought about it for 2 weeks and decided, how often would I get an opportunity to understand what a CEO role looks like? And I knew the company really well and the market really well. So I did that role for 3 years. It was a learning experience. I think it kind of propelled me and accelerated my growth to the point where I really understood business and what it means to run a company. And then I jumped back to tech to this company called Amdocs. It's, again, 20,000 people, one of the largest Israeli companies in the Israeli market. I've relocated with that company from Israel to Atlanta, where I live with my wife and 3 kids in 2006. And then in 2009, I was approached to start a startup around the CRM area. I said no, but I joined as a board member. And then this company went through a round of investment, and only then where they could afford me, I joined as a full-time employee, and we've grown this company to now 260 people. It's kind of funny. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I work in Mountain View, California. I have a commute of about 7 hours a week, but I enjoy what I do, and I'm excited. A little bit about Objectivism. I found Ayn Rand when I was 40. I remember when I was 16, I saw the fountainhead on one of my friend's bed, and I didn't pick it up. It was too thick for me. Sorry, it was Atlas. It was not the fountainhead. And on the age of 40, I had a kind of an argument with one of my close friends, and she said, "You're speaking just like Ayn Rand." And I said, who's Ayn Rand? And she said, oh my God, you didn't read the Atlas? And I said, no. And she said, you have to, because everything you say sounds like Ayn Rand. And I have to maybe share my emotional reaction to that book. I had to stop in the middle. I couldn't finish the book. I was shaking. I was like, it's someone like opening a door or a window, explaining everything that I couldn't explain to myself. And I said, there has to be something deeper. And then I went and read everything there is to read about objectivism, all of the nonfiction. Leonard Peikoff's, lectures were eye-opening. I got addicted at one point. I couldn't stop listening to them. And I felt so connected to everything that objectivism had to offer. Really, in my mind, I call it the physics of ideas, right? It's so true that it's physics. It's proven, and it's I see it as something that. So anyway, long story short, I helped found the Israeli Center. I'm dedicated a lot of my time to writing and talking to a lot of people about objectivism. I'm close with Yaron and ARI. Yeah, I'll be happy to share maybe some more details in how it affected my life in more meaningful ways, but that's kind of the short history of me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Tal. So let's talk about objectivism a little bit in the context of your career. So what are some of the maybe guiding principles that have been most important to you and to your success, and how have you used kind of objectivism as a tool in that way?
I would say that I was quite a principled individual before, but I became, in my mind, 10 times clearer and more principled after, discovering objectivism. It actually became, everything became visible to me, So the virtues of objectivism, the principles, allowed me to think about what I'm doing and how I'm thinking. I went through several processes of re-examining thoughts I had or principles I was practicing. I did a self-psychoanalysis around several aspects of my life and really had to retrain my brain on, taking risks was one thing, and analyzing specific parts of both my personal life and my business life where I thought I was wrong. And my emotional reactions were off. So I would say the number one impact it has on my life right now is that Base, my company, is being managed with, I would call it objectivism or objectivist principles of pure honesty. We hire only people that we feel are true thinkers, individuals that can think for themselves. Call it extreme ownership of their role. We don't compromise. It's very, very hard. Our company could be 400 people right now, and it's not because we're just slow in hiring and we're just hiring the right people. We're making tough decisions in product on how to do it correctly, and we spend 9/10 of our time thinking and maybe 1/10 of the time doing. In other areas, of course, it's not the same, but I would say in product strategy and in market strategy, we take a lot of time to examine how objective our opinions are and trying to make the best decisions possible. Yeah, that I would say is how deep objectivism runs into my day-to-day.
That's great.
So let's switch gears a little bit. One of the hardest choices for students is figuring out what they want to do with their lives, like what career they want to choose. So what advice do you have for students who are struggling with their career choice? Like, how do you marry your passion and talent?
I think this is one of the most misunderstood decisions in human life. When I was back in this training company that I was managing right after college, we had an idea, because it was a training organization preparing students for SATs. We saw that people are totally confused about what it is that they want to learn. It was all about how hard is it to get to law school, and if I'm smart, I will go to law school because it's the hardest. And it's kind of a self-selecting process of like, I just go to the toughest ones. Either psychology, because it was very hard to get accepted, or engineering, or there was zero process of introspecting that I saw. And we had an idea of opening this service of consulting to people. It was like, what do you really want to do? And we tried it, and it was a flop, right? Nobody would even pay, you know, I think it was like $200 or $300 to have someone help them decide what it is that they want to do. And it always intrigued me that the most important decision of your life, I think, maybe, you know, your partner is another decision at this level of magnitude, we spend so little time thinking about. And more than that, society did not create a mechanism that allows us at the age of 18 or 20 or 21 or 24 to think what it is that I'm going to do for the next 40 years, right? And I can't stress enough how saddening it is to interview about 15 people every week, young people, and seeing that they're, you know, ask them this question over and over again. Okay, let's make a deal. I deposit $10 million into your account right now, and my only condition is for the next 3 years, you wake up every Monday and you do the same exact thing from Monday to Friday, right? And of course, productive. You cannot take the money and you know, tour the world. And what would you do? And they take a minute to think, and I get answers that are like, I'd open a restaurant, I'd build bridges, I would open a school, you know, things that are way off to, you know, of what Base has to offer as a software company. And then I challenge them. It's like, why? So why don't you do it? What are you missing? Right? The $10 million, do you really need $10 million to go be an educator, or go be, you know, a bridge architect, or, you know, I see that people just don't have the courage to sit down and think what it is that makes life beautiful for me, and what am I passionate about. And I can tell you that one of the things I'm proud of is that with my kids, I talk about it all the time. What do you want to do? What's exciting to you? And my 17-year-old is on his way from, you know, he's finishing high school to California to learn in this private college called Nomon that is only about one thing, which is 3D design. And I'm seeing him getting more and more passionate, and can't wait to make that move. And I'm happy to see my kid being so clear about what it is that he wants to do. I think the decision is the most important thing. Sitting down and figuring out what it is that I love doing and I would do all day long even if nobody paid me to do, and then trying to figure out a way to make money out of it. And there's always a way to make money if it's something that is meaningful, it's productive. So sorry for my long answer. I think the focus should be in the decision-making process, because I think after you make a decision and it's clear to you what you want to be, the rest is tactical. And if you have issues with making a plan, that's an easy problem to fix.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you for your answer, Tal. So you talked in that a little bit about, you know, we're talking about career choice, and we're also talking about courage. And I think a lot of students who are interested in objectivism, probably, you know, in large part after reading some of the fiction, are really inspired to build a business or to pursue entrepreneurship in some avenue, and that takes a lot of courage. And right. So I'd like to kind of split this question into two parts, and let me know if any of this needs repeating. But I'd like to ask, you know, how can one, you know, if you're giving advice to a young person interested in entrepreneurship, how can one develop the courage to take an idea and materialize it, knowing the risks of entrepreneurship? And then, you know, the second part of that question being, you know, what are some of the practical tips you can give? You know, looking for investors and really the day-to-day kind of grind of something like that, what is some practical insight
Right.
you can give?
Well, first, I think that one should be cognizant of the fact that running a business really requires you to understand the different aspects of business. And, you know, when you're very young, I would say it's kind of risky because you don't know a lot of stuff. And people that have made it very, very young, if you see what happened, is that they got a lot of help or a lot of money to get help very early on. So there is this part in the you know, in a business life where you're not making money and you're still developing your product. If you think that your product or your service is so phenomenal so that you can get someone to fund that period of time, then go ahead and do it, because if you're smart, you'll figure things out, like how to market and how to productize your product and how to price it and how to recruit people and so on and so forth. There's so many things you need to know, but it's not, you know, none of them is, as they call, rocket science, as if rocket science is super difficult. But I think getting a lot of help and opening your mind to learn fast is the key in getting through that you know, period of time where you're not making money. On the other hand, I don't think people should run to open companies when they're 22 or 23 or 24. You know, if you're Mark Zuckerberg and you're you know, a genius, and go ahead and do it. But if you're not, you're mortal people like me, you can take the time to learn more about what it is that you want to do, become a professional, get to the point where you have not only an idea but a prototype, and you know that it's going to make money. It is something people will pay you to purchase or to use. Take the time to do it. You know, a lot of people are saying, you know, you need to fail, you need to fail. I'm not such a big fan on failure. You know, I think resiliency and being able to come back from a failure is very, very important. But why fail if you can succeed? And so you should always plan for success. In a way, do I know enough? Is my product does it make sense? Did I do the research? Can I recruit people to partner with me who are really, really strong on the sales and marketing side, who can, you know, mentors? Getting the right kind of money is very important. Not just any money, but money from the right people, the right companies who can help open doors for you. So I know this is kind of a, I don't want to deter you from opening businesses when you're young. You should, if you feel like you have everything you need. And be very cognizant of the fact that you need to master almost every aspect of business in order to make it. You need to know how to develop a product. You need to know how to market and sell it. You need how to service customers. You need to know how to do PR. You need to know how to recruit, to manage your finances, to do reporting, to manage your investors, and that takes time. So be appreciative of what it takes to run a company. It'll be great for you to maybe help run a company first, to learn at the expense of, you know, another company. And when you get to the point where you feel like, you know, you have something to offer that really requires spinning off to another company, go ahead and do it, because that's where the real reward is. I always say nobody gets really rich by accumulating high salaries over their career. People become richer because of equity. That's it. This is how you make big money. So you want to have, you want to plan your career to a point where at one point you have significant equity. How to get to equity? You can be a, you know, an executive in a company and get a big piece of it without starting your own company, and that's fine. You know, another way is to start a company and take much more risk and potentially much more reward. So and I can answer specific questions if anyone have questions about specific aspects of opening a company and creating a product and so on.
Thank you, Tal. Yeah, I think that's great advice. Particularly, I live in Silicon Valley. I see a lot of young entrepreneurs with kind of half-baked ideas, but they're so anxious to get into the game with maybe not enough preparation. So that
Yeah,
definitely
it's kind of
resonates.
cool, right? It's very cool to open your own. By the way, like I said, I don't think it's cool to say, I've opened 3 businesses and they all failed miserably. Like, okay, if you come to me and you ask for funding for the 4th one, I won't invest.
Right.
So a little bit more on this, like, what do you think are some of the things that people don't, or rather, let me put it like this, like, what are some unknowns that people don't recognize in the process of starting a business or with entrepreneurship?
The depth of knowledge required to create a product that people will pay for. I think people are underestimating the complexity. If you let's say you design a new type of spoon, right? And you say, what's so complicated about a spoon, right? It's the simplest thing I can think about. To get to a point where you have a spoon that will take market share from the incumbents who make spoons in a much more efficient way than you do, creating a design that is really differentiated and knowing how to market and brand it, that metrics you'll have to start measuring in order to know how you're doing. I can think about 20 different things that you don't think of that are in the process of creating a new type of spoon, right? Not to mention a software company. So, I can go on and on about different things, but I don't want to discourage people, because what happens, the nice thing that happens, it starts simple, but if you are a learner and you work really, really hard and you read a lot and you talk to the right people, you can learn very fast. And at one point, you can make a decision to invest in areas you'll never be good at, like finance or branding or something. If I'm a software engineer, I'm really not good at marketing usually, right? So hiring the right type of people and knowing who to look for and what is a good marketer, right, for your product. That's something you can learn really, really fast. And I can say Base has been a learning experience for the last, 5 years. We really grew a company to a size where we're hopefully will be hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, and will give Salesforce.com a run for its money. I've learned during the last 5 years how to grow a company to be really, really big. But I can say in the first several years, it was learning every day to do something different. And I had to change my focus and my role from sales to customer success to implementation, professional services. So, if you're not afraid of learning a lot and learning fast, and you trust yourself to hire partners, you should go for it and not be scared. But I'm going back to my original answer. Just appreciate the level of complexity it takes to create a product. It's really hard.
Absolutely. Tal, we've got a live question here from Ricardo that's kind of along these lines of how to operate a small company, particularly when you maintain kind of an ideology that's a little bit unique and guides your practices. Ricardo wants to know if he wants to, have associations or international alliances, or in general just working with other organizations. How can he collaborate with other organizations that are maybe not ideologically similar?
I have a saying, it's the business of business is business. And what I mean by that is when you're in business, you should care about business. And you should, in a way, never betray your principles. I'll give you an example. We serve a lot of nonprofits and people that, even I'll call them Washington-based customers and so on and so forth. I'm here for the business, right? I'm not here to to serve only the people that I think are doing good in the world. So first, from a philosophical perspective, when you're wearing the hat of a business person, be a business person. Don't be a philosopher. But never betraying your principles. What they do, how they collaborate. If you need something from them, you need to define exactly what you need from them, what they can give you, and try to get it. I'll need more details to know exactly what kind of collaboration you'd like to create with those organizations. But assuming you're talking about customers or potential partners, I always think about it as like what's good for my company, what do I need from them, and they could be in a very different political opinions that I have or whatever, but the business of business is business.
Absolutely. Ricardo, thanks for your question. I'd just like to reiterate, if anyone wants to submit live questions, we are taking them, so feel free.
So Tal, in your role as an intellectual activist with the Ayn Rand Center in Israel, what advice do you have for students who are interested in activism and spreading Ayn Rand's ideas, and what has your approach been with the Ayn Rand Center in Israel?
Yeah, so Boaz, who's my partner there, I think is doing a phenomenal job because I think he does two things really well. First, he's a great marketer, and he knows how to insert our messages into channels where a lot of people are listening. He writes in newspapers, and he's on Israeli TV almost on a weekly basis, on radio on a weekly basis, and a lot of people are exposed to this contrarian views that they're like, are you serious? Are you against minimum wage? How come? And then they hear it, or are you for bringing more, products from China and lowering customs and so on and so forth? And I think that that's the first thing, being a great marketer and understanding what are the channels that allow you to broadcast your message to a lot of people. So at least people that are interested can pick it up. Second thing that I found is that we should focus in education, not activism, political activism to the point where you're trying to convince or convert or whatever. People don't convert; they convert themselves. You don't convert them; they convert themselves, and they need to be in a specific mindset or a place to be able to be converted, if you will. So a lot of what we do is education. We're doing the essay contest. We are doing a lot of talks in high schools where we feel like people are more open to kind of establishing their ideas. And we don't spend time arguing or fighting with other groups and so on and so forth. What I try to do, on my kind of on a personal level, I never argue. If somebody wants to argue with me, I say, why waste the time? In the end of it, you'll tell me what you think, I'll tell you what you think, and we just wasted time. If you're willing to get to a discussion where we put both our minds to try and discover the truth, I'm willing to engage. And when you come to that discussion with this mindset, then suddenly they don't argue with you. You're not trying to convince them, they're not trying to convince you. It's like, okay, so let's think about it together. Does it make sense to you? Can you bring me an example? And the whole approach. So it's kind of like what I said about educating and not converting people. Yeah, I think if you think about it this way, you'll be much more effective in the way you engage with people.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard it quite put that way, of trying to arrive at an honest answer collaboratively, and really being open to hearing from the other person. That's a great way to look at it.
Right.
Go ahead.
Oh, Philip, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I was going to ask if I could ask a follow-up to that.
Yeah.
So, I guess, how do you prime the conversation to follow that path of inquiry rather than debate or argument?
I've heard somewhere, I don't remember who said that, but first you have to validate if you're talking to a rational person. That the first thing I do, and I hope I'm answering your question. So tell me if I'm not. But what I do first is I'm trying to understand who am I talking to. I do that a lot with interviews, by the way. That the first thing I do is trying to understand who that person is. How do they think? And so if I get to the conclusion that this person is irrational, meaning he or she do not have even the tools to think about things logically, then there's no hope, right? And then I try to disengage because I'm just wasting time. If I think they're thinking logically but they're making errors, that's where you can start. But then you agree on the method first. You say, do we agree that there is truth? There is right and wrong, right? Because one of the things that I'm challenged most with is like there's no truth and you know, there's no right and wrong. There's right for you and right for me. And if you enter a discussion with it like there's no ultimate truth, then again, you know, if I don't get them to agree that there is a reality out there and there is truth, and there is one way, which is called the scientific method, to discover that reality through our senses and so on. Again, there's no hope. So that's how I try to. Those are the things that I talk about in the beginning of a discussion. If you see that there is a foundation, then you move forward, because then they cannot. Then it's like checkmate, right? Once they agree to the rules, you win. You understand what I mean? Because we know how to play the game. We know the game, right? We know we have better strategies than other people. We don't have contradictions. They do. So it's amazing. Once you get people to kind of agree with you on the basics of philosophy, which is metaphysics and epistemology, then morality and politics are easy. That's the way I look at it.
All right. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. I'm wondering, are there any kind of best practices or you know, habits, anything like that, that you try to implement and that you recommend to others who are trying to live like a value-driven and productive life? Anything repeatable that's good to keep in focus?
It's a great question. I think first, learning to be optimistic, I would say, is the first thing I would say that it took me time to learn. Knowing that there's always hope and there's always time and things could get better. So that's kind of a very, very kind of foundational attitude to everything. But from a habit perspective, yes, always be engaged in something that is both, you know, one side of your life needs to be productive, and you need to be convinced that what you're doing is good and meaningful. And you should check yourself. You know, Steve Jobs said that he used to look at himself in the mirror every morning and ask himself a question. It was like, am I doing what I want to do? And if for 3 weeks the answer has been like, not so, then he knew that he had to change something meaningful in his life. So I think that's kind of the mantra that you need to ask yourself. This daily, even project by project, am I doing the right thing? Am I going to make an impact? And so on. Taking the time to think about the problems is a very important habit to have. Also, I'm a true believer in hobbies. That really enrich your life. You know, I play music and I race cars, and I play tennis, and I do those things, and I try to be the best I can be in them. They add such a different, you know, aspect to life that it is a source of enjoyment that I think is super important. I see that a lot of objectivists are like fundamentalists when it comes to like productive work. It's like, yeah, I need to work 20 hours a day and be as productive as I can. And I think that's not the only source of enjoyment in life. There's so many others, right? So trying to open your mind and relax a little bit, and don't think you have to create a company of $1 billion to be happy. There's many different ways to be, and knowing yourself really well, and asking yourself, what do I really enjoy doing? Why am I enjoying it? You know, I have this. I'll give you one tip. I'm managing my life out of one list. I have this stupid app called Workflowy. It's just a list, and at any given point in time, there are several lists that are continuously prioritized, and I'm asking myself, am I doing the right things? And when you have a list and you're saying, is that the most important thing I'm working on right now? It's very obvious to see, no, I have my priorities wrong, and this thing needs to trump the other thing. So run your life with a list, you know, in my tech kind of tip that I would give to make sure that you're spending your time wisely.
Yeah, I think a lot of young people in particular, in my experience, who are interested in objectivism, even get nervous about a hierarchy like that, or they go about a hierarchy in maybe the wrong way, or to their detriment, because of exactly what you're describing of this hyper focus on career or, you know, productive work, and kind of a neglect of maybe some personal relationships or some hobbies and things of that nature. And I think that's a really common thing for young people in objectivism.
It goes down very deep to the way our brain works, right? And how do we derive happiness and value, and really connecting with your deepest emotions, and the way your mind is wired. You know, I don't know why, since the age of 3, I'm obsessed with cars, right? Maybe because my dad was a mechanic, right? But I'm obsessed with cars, and I've never figured out why, but anything on 4 wheels just gets me excited. And I ask myself, you know, questions over questions over questions. Why do I like those type of cars and not those type of cars? And then only after a while, I figured out, okay, so this is what I need to do with it, right? I need to focus on those cars, and I want to race in this series where the cars are equal, and so on and so forth. And the reward is so big because I'm connected to who I am. And I am okay to travel every week 5,000 miles to the other side of the country because I'm doing something that I know that I love, and I know why I love it. So again, just ask yourself those true questions of what is it that I enjoy so much doing before I owe anyone anything, including this concept of creating company and being rich. So again, it goes back to understanding yourself and understanding your brain, and connecting to the backside of your brain, because that's where everything, you know, fun is, right? All your emotions, all your experiences, and in a way, those two sides of your brain need to work together. So I'm a true believer in retrospection, introspection, and really asking yourself if you're doing the things that serve you best.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay, Tal, Philip, we've got like 1 million live questions right now, so let's try to run through some of those. Let's address those. Jeff here asks, is there a particular business story or situation that stands out in your mind where applying principles was essential to the outcome?
That's a great question. You know, we as a company learned Apple really well, and we got to meet people from the inside all the way to people that worked directly with Steve Jobs. So I would say Apple. I think not many people know how Apple got to the point where it created those level of products, but the level of principle and the level of rigor and consistency that went into the way they've analyzed what they're doing is just phenomenal. And the level of thinking and attention to details and depth of thinking is where I saw that in order to create such an amazing product, there needs to be an amazing process behind it. And I would say in general, I don't know what you love, but if you are in an industry and you have a company that is doing amazingly well, search for the amazing people behind it. There's always a story behind it. There's no chance in this world, right? If you see an amazing product, there's an amazing story behind it. Go and search for it. For me, it's Apple. I love what they do, and I love how they did it. I think they lost it with Steve Jobs, but I would say that's what comes to my mind.
Okay, great. God, we've got so many here. Let's see. There's one here that's kind of along similar lines. Well, that's not jumping out at me yet. But let's go ahead and ask. Sorry, it's like a lot to keep track of here. Melanie is referencing something you said earlier when you were talking about product strategy, where you said you try to think to act at a 90-to-10 ratio and question yourself about how objective your ideas are. Melanie's looking for a more specific answer on like how do you gauge how objective your ideas on those sorts of things are.
The best way to check your assumptions are metrics and objective data. So we are very, I would call data, I love the term data informed and not data driven, because I don't think your decision needs to be driven by data, but informed by data. And it's amazing how you change your mind once you see reality contradicting your assumptions. And it happens every time. Especially if you're serving thousands of customers like we do today with our software. So there's tons of data, and you can always think, even check your assumptions after the fact, because I said A would happen if we do this, and then you see and you release it and you see what happened. So again, the best way to check your objective assumptions is data and see what actually happened in reality. It's the same as the scientific process if you think about it. And learning and kind of doing a retrospective, like I was wrong. For instance, I'll give you an example. We just changed our pricing and increased our pricing. Some of the people said, "Oh, it will kill us." Some of the people say, "No, nothing will happen. We will lose the right customers. We'll gain we will lose the wrong customers. We'll gain the right customers," and so on. And then you roll it out. And I think it's very important for the people that were wrong to think, why was I wrong? What assumptions did I take or make that led to me not forecasting what's going to happen next? Maybe I don't know those segments well enough. I don't know the sensitivity and the price elasticity as well as I think I do, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of an example of why you need to be very objective. Again, I would argue that there's always data that you can collect that will make you more objective about how you think about things. For instance, one of the things I see with entrepreneurs, they're over-evaluating their ideas without bringing hard, concrete data of what the market will actually pay them for their ideas. So, so that's something to be careful of when you're as a potential entrepreneur. Just doing a lot of research, objective research of who would buy it, and potentially trying to prove it by proof points, which is I have 5 customers willing to buy my product today if I had it. Right? That's a proof point. So yeah, it's to concretize things. That's the short answer.
Great. We had a question kind of about data practices too, and I think that this touches on that a bit. However, we also have a question here that kind of goes back to how your practices might be a little bit different than others who are not kind of working within the framework of objectivist principles. And this question relates specifically to hiring. Melanie asks, how do you convince your organization to slow down to hire the right people versus just hiring for specific fields or specific skills or getting the job done in growth as a standard. Also,
Right.
does that approach, maybe not align with what you said about business is business, or the business of business is business?
Yeah. So hiring is a great topic, and this is an area where I feel I am applying a lot of my principles in. Well, the first thing to motivate your coworkers to hire the right people is the idea of A players recruit A players and B players recruit C players. If you get a B player in the team, they will recruit C players. That's one thing. That's how it works. Secondly, you motivate them by saying, look, you spend more time with those people than you spend with your spouse or your family. You want to make sure that you have a reason to wake up in the morning and want to work with them. They need to be people that are smarter than you if you can, if you can find them. So that's with regards to motivation. How do you make it happen is you create and you train the people to know what to ask and what to look for. This is very, very hard to understand who's an individual in a matter of an hour or 30 minutes. This is why I always try to create a true discussion rather than you tell me what you've done so far and how good you are and so on and so forth. I challenge people. I argue with people. I want to see them. I ask them what they're interested in, and then I drill as deep as I can to see how thoughtful they are and how knowledgeable they are about the things they say they're good at, to see what's their level of depth. And we have this systems of what we call only green flags, no red flags, in the sense that if you're finishing an interview and you say, oh, they're amazing, but I have this, one red flag about it. I don't know how honest they are, that's a no, right? You should only have green flags of like, this is amazing, and this is amazing, and this is amazing about this person. And if you have red flags, then those red flags will turn into something worse when you get to know them much better. It's the hardest thing. It's one of the hardest things to do to know how to find the right talent. You want to look for thoughtfulness. For me, intellectual honesty and intellectual capacity is where everything starts. So you want to look for depth. You want to look for how intellectual they are, how curious they are, and another tip is to look for success in their history, because good things happen to smart people, and so if they got fired, let go, those are red flags. It's like nobody would let go of an A player. If the company broke and everything exploded, yes, I get it. But you had to be let go. Even if the company is downsizing, I would never, ever let go of my top performers, right? I will keep them around me. I won't take a salary. I give my salary to them just not to lose them, right? So those are kind of the principles you want to look at when you're hiring.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're kind of running out of time here, and there's still some great questions. Thank you guys so much for asking them. We really appreciate it. Definitely keep tuning in and keep asking. But I do want to kind of wrap up with a question about productive heroes, which happens to be the theme of OCON this year. And so we're asking all our mentors about, I know you mentioned Steve Jobs, totally a big fan. But who are some other people who you consider to be productive heroes who have really inspired your work?
I'm a fan of physics, so every time I read about Isaac Newton, for me, that's one of the most brilliant geniuses ever. And of course, I read a lot about Einstein as well from that perspective. Of course, Ayn Rand herself is a genius as far as I'm concerned. There's specific people that I like from the areas of my hobbies. Specifically, I play the drums, and there's a guy named Dave Weckl, W-E-C-K-L. He's the drummer of Chick Corea Electric Band, and this guy's my hero. It's just he took drumming to a level that I never thought is possible, but his musicianship and his level. I got to meet him. I got to do a whole day workshop with him, dream come true. And from a racing perspective, Ayrton Senna, the Brazilian Formula One driver, I don't know if you get to see his documentary. I totally recommend it. Again, a true professional who understood the psychological and the technical and the physical aspects of racing, and took it to a whole different level. And it was super inspiring with the way he approached it, his personality as well. Yeah, those are kind of my heroes, and they make life better for me, by knowing what's possible.
Absolutely, totally agree. Well, I think that's a really kind of great way to wrap up on a positive note. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming out and for asking all these great questions. We do these every month, so keep an eye out on our Facebook page, and if you're on our mailing list, you can also always email info@striveclubs.org. Or if you have specific questions about the mentor program, we run these through the mentor program, which is me and newly Philip. And really, we're just dedicated to connecting you guys with professionals who have used this philosophy to better their personal lives and their career. We connect you through the Q&As monthly, but we also have an opportunity for you to connect one-on-one with mentors in your field, outside of your field, kind of whatever you're interested in talking about. We can connect you with someone who has kind of lived life with these ideas, and they can give you kind of some well-needed advice, maybe. So if you're at all interested in that, again, you can check out our Facebook page. You can also email info@striveclubs.org or mentoring@striveclubs.org. We're happy to connect you guys. Also, hopefully, we'll see a lot of you at OCON. So that's it for me. Thank you again, Tal, so much for this. This is really great. I think we all learned a lot.
Thanks, Cassandra. Thanks, Philip, for organizing this. And if anyone wants to connect directly with me, I'd be happy to connect and give some more advice.
Thanks for your time, Tal.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye, everyone.